What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ Buck back with you. Buck, what's going on, man?
Man, not too much, DJ. Coming off a great weekend. You love our weekends this time of year. It's funny because you look up, we're already in the middle of June. You got Father's Day coming up next weekend. Everyone is talking about off-season calendar and those things. Well, we're in the midst of it. And DJ, once you get to Father's Day, I mean, you blink, it's 4th of July. And after that, it's downhill. The season is going. It is amazing how quickly we're almost at the point of being right back to training camp.
Oh, dude, it's right around the corner, man. And in talking to buddies around the league, I always appreciate this time of year because for those that don't know, once the draft is over, it is like, on the personnel side, being a teacher. Like you almost kind of like, okay, we got through finals. Now it's summer break. Even though they've got these off-season activities and a mini camp, it's a different mindset. Everybody's happy. Everybody's joyful. Have you talked to any of your friends in the league, Buck, and they've said that they don't look awesome in OTAs and minicamp?
No, everybody does.
Everybody's undefeated, man. I mean, it's the same thing in the training camp. Like the first week of training camp, you go through like, oh man, wait, look at this guy, look at that guy. Oh, never had depth like this.
But you know what? You know what the best thing is? God, man, it's gonna be so many guys that are picked up from our team. Like we're just so talented that when we cut,
I don't know how we're gonna do cuts. I mean, all of it's gonna get claimed. We're all gonna
all the guys are gonna play somewhere. Yeah, like it's that time of year. So many guys are gonna get picked up and claimed, and but it is that, and the all-season programs have changed so much that you have some people who have their veterans come in for mandatory minicamp. Other guys have them sit out, and it's about the young players. You never know though until you put the pads on. And even then, the thing that I love about like training camp, DJ, the moves that are made after that first preseason game, like everyone is going to go about
it goes. So we're going to go undefeated. So then after that first training, we might not win a game. We really might not win a game.
All the veterans are instantaneously signed immediately after that first week. Like, we gave you a chance, but
by the way, have you talked to anybody? I had a conversation with the GM the other day about this, but about the new kickoff rules. We'll keep an eye on that as we go through training camp. A couple conversations I had. Here's the interesting stuff that I got. Number one is teams aren't going to show anything in the preseason games. They're going to work on this stuff. They're going to go over video. They're going to go over technique, and they're going to do things in practice and try and keep things hidden from the media, what have you, what their strategy is going to be, and how they're going to, diversify their personnel on that play. And then I was talking to a GM, and he was like, look, we're just going to kick the ball out of the end zone. They start at the 30. Like, all it takes is one of these things to get popped and returned. And like, what are we doing here? Just trust your defense. Let's just kick it out of the back of the end zone. Give them ball at the 30. And I was like, okay. I mean, I still got to brush up on all these rules. We have our officials thing that they do for the network that usually comes up in July. But like there was so much stuff going on with the draft and getting ready for that. Then this rule dropped. Like I got to go back and refresh myself on this whole thing. But I did find it interesting that this guy was like, all this talk about it, like just kick it out of the back of the end zone.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I did get a chance to see the Jags kind of practice it or whatever. And without giving out trade secrets, it's just a completely different look. And the personnel that you put on there has to be different, not only from a return standpoint, because where the ball can go, the ball is going to be returned, but who's going to be frontline blockers. You also have the kicker has been neutralized in terms of like hang time is no longer an issue. Directional kicking is no longer necessarily rewarded. And I think I heard special teams coaches talk about when you go and study the XFL who utilized this, a lot of times the guy that was making the tackles were the kicker. And so they're experimenting with, like, so for instance, Justin Reed for the Kansas City Chiefs might be their kickoff guy. So he can just kind of pooch kick it.
You add an extra tackler.
Add an extra tackler to the evaluation. I mean, to the equation. It is it's an interesting thing. What I do like about it, potentially this could bring the returner back. And I mean, what's a more exciting play than the return? Like whether it's a punt return or a kicker return, being able to see someone flip the field, it should give you value. I just can't wait to see what it looks like officially, so we can kind of put it together and start looking at the different strategies that people are using.
Yeah, no, it's something we'll keep an eye on as we get through the summer and get closer to the season and get out to some training camps. Today on the show, we are going to focus on a theme. We've done this with some of these off-season episodes, like to do that, and we're going to look at the most consistent players not only historically, but some of the active guys here. Going to look at some different positions, some different statistics of guys who have been incredibly consistent. And if that's that's something we all strive for when you're trying to find players. You want guys that are reliable, dependable, and you know what you're going to get year in and year out. So we'll try and find some traits at some of these different positions that, hey, okay, maybe this is something that lends itself towards that. Not really the roller coaster ride, but a more consistent player. So we're going to do that, have some fun going through those different positions. But before we get to that, I did want to get your thoughts on Jordan Love's comments the other day, talking about not having a number one wide receiver puts more stress on a defense. And maybe the better way to say that is if you're Jordan Love is, hey, I have multiple ones, instead of saying I don't have any number one, it's just I have multiple ones. The production is going to be limited because I'm going to spread it around to all these guys.
Yeah. So DJ was funny. And this goes all the way back to when I was in Green Bay. And it wasn't necessarily said in those terms, but I can tell you that Mike Holmgren and Ron Wolf, but particularly Mike Holmgren, believe that to flourish in the National Football League, you don't need a number one wide receiver. As Dave referenced it, you don't need A's on the perimeter. You can win with B's and B pluses, provided that you have an A plus quarterback and you have a system that creates opportunities for them. They arrogantly, and I will say this like because Coach Holmgren came from Niners where they won the games, they believe that the system created the player more so than the player created the system, meaning system quarterback creates the wideout as opposed to the wideout being a guy that makes and elevates the quarterback. Fast forward to looking at all of the disciples that came out of there. Andy Reid was a disciple that came out of there. Andy Reid goes from not being a play caller in Green Bay to being the head coach with the Philadelphia Eagles, goes to 5 NFC championship games with Donovan McNabb. They didn't have a notable wide receiver there up until the time that he really got T.O. They didn't have a true number one, but think about all the success that he had. You could talk about Deshaun Jackson, but I don't know if Deshaun Jackson was viewed as a pure number one. He was a big play specialist. So Andy Reid had a lot of success with that model. Then go to Kansas City, he was able to do it. And before Tyreek Hill became Tyreek Hill, people have to remember Tyreek Hill was a 5th round pick who was a returner early, that when they made him a number one receiver, everyone in the league was like, hold up. This guy was really running back per se that they made that. And then you think about, look, they lose Tyreek Hill after he became an elite receiver. They go to back-to-back Super Bowls and win without a dominant number one receiver, even though Travis Kelce is the anchor of the passing game. There's some truth to that. I now talk to Doug Peterson, and I remember Doug Peterson when he first took the job and we were sitting in the office and he talked about the offense being one where if the quarterback is at a high-level quarterback, you don't need A's. You can get away with good, very good receivers, but you don't need that elite receiver. You go to that 2022 season, Trevor Lawrence plays well. They win a playoff game over the Chargers. They get to the divisional round, and they have Marvin Jones and Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, Zay Jones. No one that people would say, oh, you can rubber stamp them as a number one. Last year, they tried to do it. They bring Calvin Ridley over, who had, I would say, the potential to be the number one. They viewed maybe as the number one. It didn't mesh out. So now when I look at Jordan Love's comments, there is some truth to that. If you really believe in that system and you believe in the quarterback, that, hey, man, the guy that is most difficult to defend is the quarterback that's willing to throw to the open receiver, not the guy that is throwing to the high-level guy that you can load your defense to and find a way to double and put a rat on that area. But if a guy is willing to throw to anybody at any time, it does put a different level of stress on the defense because now you got to play honest. And it's hard to do in the game when you're trying to take something away.
Mm-hmm. No, I was thinking about just in the last few years, and we've touched on this in previous episodes, but when you think about Green Bay, obviously the team we're talking about here with their collection of wideouts they have, well, they had a true alpha number one in Devontae Adams, gone. You look at Buffalo, Diggs, gone. Now you look at Kansas City, Tyreek Hill, gone. You look at the Chargers with Keenan Allen. I mean, Keenan Allen's a bona fide one in terms of the production that he's put up, catching 100 balls a zillion times, gone. So you've had more than one team go with the, okay, more is more, right? More guys is going to be better for us in the long run in terms of spreading out those resources. Now, Philadelphia's doubled down on their guys. They're paid their dudes. And Cincinnati, TBD. They've got big contracts coming up one way or the other, with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. And we'll see how they navigate around that. But it is an interesting way to look at if you have, a limited number of dollars and you have that budget, would you rather budget that on the star, or would you rather budget that and spread it out, as you said, and have a collection of Bs?
So what I wonder about it, I think you have to have an honest conversation on how good is your quarterback, because that ultimately determines if you can get away with a strategy like that. You have to, in my mind, have an A-level quarterback to be able to do this. Going all the way back to Tom Brady and the Patriots, because for so many years, they won like that. DJ, those early 2000s teams, I mean, they're doing it with David Givens and David Patton and Troy Brown and a lot of lesser known players on the perimeter. But Tom Brady and those guys are winning Super Bowls. When they did have Randy Moss and Wes Welker catching a bunch of passes, they went undefeated. No. They didn't win. They go back to a Julian Edelman and Danny Amendola and those guys, and they win again. Some of that might be because Tom Brady's that good, but also maybe you allocate the resources differently on the rest of your team. So instead of it being the pass catchers who, let's have a real discussion about wide receivers. At their best, a wide receiver may get 8 to 10 catches. DJ, when we're talking about now paying $35 to $40 million, are you getting the return on the investment when a guy only gets that many touches? Like, how many touches do they need to be able to impact the game? And do you evaluate it differently in terms of, yeah, that's great that you've had 120 catches and all those other things, but it comes down to yards per catch and how many touchdowns are you putting up? Because if you're not delivering explosive plays, you're not delivering plays that directly lead to points, what are we doing when it comes to paying big money for that number one wide receiver?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's an interesting point when it comes to the team building aspect of it. I think this will lead us perfectly into this transition, Buck, because, we're talking about guys that are consistent. If you're going to pay someone, you want that consistent production. And what does that look like? And I thought we could go through some of these positions and see, what are the characteristics that they share. Now, some of these guys, you're going to see they played a long time with the same team and were very productive when we look at these wideouts. So we had our man Jack pull the numbers on this, Buck. Most consecutive seasons with 80 plus receptions. So that's consistency in its definition. We also had most consecutive seasons with 1,000 plus receiving yards. So I want to give you the names. There's only 2 active players right now currently on the list of the most consecutive seasons with 80 plus receptions. That's going to change as some of these young guys continue to continue playing. But here are the names. Top of the list. This is with 8 consecutive seasons of 80 plus catches. You have Jerry Rice, Marvin Harrison, Torrey Holt, and how about Travis Kelce makes the list there. So those are the names. Let's start just with those names. Obviously, they're talking about all-time greats here, but Jerry Rice, Marvin Harrison, Torrey Holt, those are the 3 receivers right there. What would you say those 3 guys have in common?
I would say all were outstanding route runners. All had the opportunity to play in the same system for a long time. So mastery of skill, mastery of system allows you the freedom to maybe take some liberties when it comes to what do I need to do to get open. But the system like the back of your hand, so you understand the timing and rhythm of the route progression. So there's consistency not only in their performance, but in what they were asked to do and in the system that they were in. To me, that's what stands out. Not necessarily their skill set, but they were able to really stay in a system that allowed them to really flourish. And because they were able to stay in that system and continue to stack on top of year after year after year, it allowed them to really have an expansive playbook within something that was very familiar to them.
Yeah, I think that familiarity and the quarterback play is something you'll see through the rest of this list. Let me give you the rest of these names here. Tim Brown, Brandon Marshall, Reggie Wayne, Wes Welker, Roddy White, Demaryius Thomas, Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, Jarvis Landry, and then Devontae Adams. So the tier right below those guys with 8, there's only 2 with 7. That was Tim Brown and Brandon Marshall. But again, Tim Brown played with Rich Gannon, right, when he had a nice run there. Brandon Marshall, that one was interesting because I want to say, who was he with around. Cutler? He was with Cutler, then the Jets. So he might be the one that's, if you're just looking at it, because Jerry Rice played with 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Marvin Harrison played with Peyton Manning. Torrey Holt played with the Hall of Famer and Kurt Warner. Kelsey's playing with a future Hall of Famer here in Patrick Mahomes. Tim Brown, we talked about Rich Gannon in the run that he won an MVP, right? Didn't Rich win an MVP?
I know he was close. I know he played well
with
enough to be
Gruden.
able
Yeah,
to.
yeah,
Yeah,
a
I know he
couple
played well enough
unbelievable
to be in that.
years.
Yeah,
But Brandon Marshall might be the first one where like literally we have to stop and think like, wait, who did he play with again? Like, because then right beneath him, Reggie Wayne was with Peyton, Wes Welker was with Brady, Roddy White was with Matt Ryan, Demaryius Thomas was with Peyton, Antonio Brown was with Ben Roethlisberger, Julio was with Matt Ryan. Jarvis Landry would be the next one on there, who I don't know that was, for his 6 years. I don't remember who was, who he had for the majority of those years at quarterback with the Dolphins. And then Devontae Adams had A-Rod. So the interesting names to look at for me are Brandon Marshall, what made him, kind of quarterback proof for what he accomplished. Jarvis Landry was another one that would jump out off of that list. What would you say? What do you remember about those two guys?
So Brandon Marshall, I just remember being just a big body freak when he entered the league, coming out of UCF, goes to Denver, has immediate success. And then everywhere he goes without a quarterback, never won a playoff game, but everywhere he goes, man, he was just able to kind of get it done. And DJ, I think the thing about Brandon Marshall that we will talk about, and the reason why you celebrate him, is his ability to make tough catches, his ability to create separation, utilizing his body. It, to me, was height, weight, speed thing, even though I wouldn't say speed was his biggest asset. The size. I'm bigger, I'm more physical, I'm stronger than you. So I'm going to win consistently on the perimeter because I can box you out and there's nothing you can do about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that you could put Demaryius Thomas, even though he played with a great quarterback, you could put him in that category. And Demaryius Thomas, obviously, I don't think all those years are with Peyton. You also had a Tebow with him, obviously the famous touchdown there against Ike.
Yes,
in the playoff game. But Demaryius Thomas, to me, physical, just a specimen and somebody with the height, weight, speed, and physicality, like him and Brandon Marshall, I think kind of fit in that bucket. But primarily the number of these guys, man, I think of even quickness over speed, instincts, route running, like all that polish. Precise would be words that I would use there, like dependable. I mean, obviously that these are the most consistent guys right there. I think those are a lot of traits that they shared.
Yeah. So, I would say this. I would say that if we go back and we break those down, I would say none of those guys probably measured the fastest on the clock. And I do believe that it's hard for a really fast guy to be a number one receiver because the number one receiver is expected to do all the dirty work. You expect him to get open. You expect him to be the consistent and reliable chain mover. So a lot of times those guys are the possession receivers that find a way to make plays in those critical downs. You also point out route running and how that plays a role. The reason why it plays a role is because the number one receiver faces more tactics, more oddball, gimmicky type things than anybody else. And so their technique, their route running polish has to be good enough to allow them to win with execution, them executing their job, them executing their fundamentals against an opponent that may have the defense loaded to stop them. And the final part, we talk about route running and all that. I think they have to be great ball catchers, man. They just have to have like sticky hands. They have to have that part that I think sometimes we overlook in scouting. Like, can a guy really catch? Like, can he really catch the football? And for all of those guys, they all were pretty natural catchers, which led to a bunch of numbers and consistent success for them over their careers.
No doubt. By the way, Rich Gannon, yes, he was the MVP in 2002. So we weren't imagining that. No, he had legit success. But you talk about hands. Let's take this and look at most consecutive years with 1,000+ receiving yards all time. Number one on the list. Now this is getting interesting. Number one, Jerry Rice, as you would expect, 11 consecutive seasons over 1,000 yards. Number two on the list, Buck, is Mike Evans, still going.
Oh yeah, still going.
10 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Like that's semi under the radar here with everything that's gone on in this league. Mike Evans about to tie Jerry Rice here if he can put another K up there.
And the thing about Mike Evans, watching him come out of Texas A&M, remember, like, not that he was a one-trick pony, but it was kind of like the vertical stretch player, vertical stretch player, 50-50 balls. Johnny Manziel did a really good job of giving him opportunities to make plays down the field, and he cashed in. He goes to Tampa Bay, and you're right, DJ, but 9-10 straight 1,000-yard season speaks to
with a bunch of different QBs.
It really speaks to his ability to show up each and every week and get the job done without excuses. He's a terrific player, and funny because he signed his deal early in the off season. I wonder if he wishes that he had waited a little bit to see if he could have got some more coin to watching some of the money that these guys have got.
All right, I want to there's some other names on here, right? Let's go through this because I want to see, okay, this is the difference between the catches, which is volume, right, with the catches. The yards, I think you see some different names come in here. We talked about hands. Mike Evans on this list. Chris Carter on this list. Someone you're very familiar with, Jimmy Smith, makes his way onto this list. So some new names there in that mix. But I think of Tim Brown, I think not only, polished and all that kind of stuff, but I just thought just phenomenal hands. You look at Chris Carter, phenomenal hands. Mike Evans, phenomenal hands. Like that's, again, at the end of the day, catching the ball is a big part of the evaluation. It seems like you wouldn't need to say that, but we can get enamored with separation and quickness and suddenness, physicality. But at the end of the day, like how good are you at the catch point? Can you go get it? And these guys, it's a tremendous group of pass catchers with hands.
Yeah, tremendous group of pass catchers. And maybe you know this from, your time being around Tom Telesco, but Bill Polian, I've heard him talk about this when they were evaluating players. Like catch percentage really mattered to them. Like what was your drop ratio? Like how many drops did you have per catch? Was it an issue? If you drop the ball a lot, you can't expect someone to come into the National Football League high catch guy. Those things don't typically improve or translate. I never really thought about it until I heard him talk about it, about tracking the amount of catches that someone has, because it's hard to bring someone in the league that doesn't catch at over 85, 90% clip and think that they're going to do it at a high level as a pro.
Yeah, no, it's just an interesting way to look at some of these consistent players. 10 plus touchdowns, consecutive seasons. Marvin Harrison, Jerry Rice, Chris Carter, Tommy McDonald. That goes back to the before our time there, late 50s, early 60s. Lance Allworth, another one going back. You get some of these old school guys on there. Interesting one that cracks the list. Andre Rison, Randy Moss. These are touchdown scores. So Sterling Sharp gets on here. T.O.'s on here. T.O. did it a couple times. He had 3 in a row twice. So, it's just a little different statistic, a little bit different skill set. But I think for the most part, if we're going to look at it from a scouting standpoint, if you're going to hit a home run on a guy who's going to have longevity and be a consistent player, I think it's not rocket science, right? These guys have outstanding hands. They're very instinctive, and they're excellent route runners. For the most part, they all share those 3 traits.
DJ, we just walking the skills back. The job description demands that you have to be able to create separation and get open. Job description also expects you to be able to catch a BB in the dark. Can you do those things to be a high-end playback and do those things? To me, the consistency comes from watching how someone goes about their work as a collegian, being able to get to know them. How do they talk about the job and what they want to accomplish? And then watching that play out. I think the best guests that we've had, the best guys that have had success, when we've talked to them, they all shared that ability to clearly outline and articulate what it is that they're doing, what they want to do, and how they're going to get there. I think that's important in finding consistent players at any position that can play at a high level over an extended period of time.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking for, right? I mean, that's the goal of the evaluation, is to find guys that can get you a second and maybe even a third contract and not see the production slip or drop off. That's just one position. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll look at a couple of these offensive positions and see if we can't learn any lessons. And I want to look at one defensive stat here where I think there's something to be learned about the consistency in a list with a bunch of active players. So we'll do that right after this. All right, Buck, if we look at quarterbacks real quick, let's go 4,000 yards, most consecutive seasons with 4,000 passing yards. Here we go at the top of the list. It's Drew Brees, Matt Ryan, Peyton Manning, Phillip Rivers, Matthew Stafford. Peyton Manning did it again on a second run after missing time with that neck injury. And then Tom Brady cracks the list a couple times. And Phillip Rivers cracked it again there. So you see some repeat guys. Kirk Cousins gets on there. Derek Carr gets on there. Aaron Rodgers gets on there. And Josh Allen gets on there. The ones at the bottom were 4 consecutive years. But at the very top, you're talking about Brees with 12, Matt Ryan with 10. Let's go Peyton Manning and Phillip Rivers with 8 apiece. So let's look at those 4 guys. Brees, Ryan, Peyton, and Rivers. what do you connect with those guys with that?
One, high efficient players, like really focus on stringing together completions as opposed to plays. Two, the system never changed for them. The pieces around them may have changed, but what they were asked to do always stayed the same. Three, I would say their personalities might be different outwardly, but inwardly, they're all the same people. Very competitive, very attention to detail oriented, grinders when it comes to how they work and what they do. And because of all of that stuff, they believe they've earned the right to the other stuff that comes along with it.
Right behind them is Matthew Stafford. So if we threw him in the mix as well, that would give us 1, 2, 3. That's 5 guys, right? Some interesting things. We always say it matters where you go. And you think about where you go in terms of, the P's that we talk about, the playmakers, the protection, the play caller, all those things, the organizational stability, having continuity, those things matter. You know what else I found interesting? Here's the guys. What facility did Drew Brees play in? Indoors or outdoors?
Oh, indoors in Superdome. So all these guys
Matt Ryan.
Oh, indoors. Georgia
Peyton Manning.
Indoor RCA.
Matthew Stafford.
Field. Detroit, Ford Field.
And the last one, the one that didn't play indoors, Philip Rivers. As someone who lives in San Diego and has been in Southern California most of my life, it's not different. Not that different. I mean, these guys went to ideal environments to throw the football, not even counting the players they had with them, the play callers, the protection, all those different things. Again, I remind people, like, it matters where you go. If you're just going to judge these guys strictly on production, it matters.
Yeah, it does matter. And it matters a few different ways. DJ, and because you have picked up the game of golf and you're going and getting lessons and all this other stuff.
Play at 1 o'clock today, Buck. 1 o'clock.
Oh, 1 o'clock. Okay, so now
I'm not going to hit balls early. I found out that I get there, hit balls early. That's bad. I need to empty my mind. Yeah, I got to empty my mind when I get to that first tee. But I don't want to get on a sidetrack. Go ahead.
No. Peak too soon. But this will play well for your golf thing. I'll give you this analogy. There's a reason why you want to play golf in warm weather environments as opposed to cold weather, because the ball flies farther in warm weather. Well, think about it from a quarterback. In a climate control dome, I don't have to worry about the wind and all the other stuff that can affect me as a thrower. When I am doing that, it allows me to continue to build upon my game and to have the consistency. When you are a team like Green Bay that wants to do it through the air, but then when you get into the postseason, it may be mucky, it may be windy, it may be messy. That's going to change how we have to play. It can be a bit of a concern. I just think everyone likes the franchise theory, right? Meaning that part of the appeal for independent operators is they want to own franchises like a Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, because you know exactly where you're getting each and every time you go there. And so these guys that are playing in these climate controlled domes, playing in these favorable conditions like Philip Rivers did in San Diego, they had the opportunity to know that every week when I walk out, it's going to be exactly the same. It is going to be rarity that I have to deal with rain or anything else. There's a lot of comfort and security that comes with that.
Can I give you one other thing that, we can talk about, accuracy, poise, decision-making, all those like critical factors when you're looking at a position. But I talked about a couple of things we don't think about. Obviously, the environment we just mentioned, had that conversation. If I was going to ask you to give an evaluation on these 5 guys at the top, I think that the word toughness would enter in very early in the evaluation. Let me just give you a refresher. Drew Brees has what many considered career-ending injury with his shoulder. He goes on after that injury, plays through it to the point now where you read the articles, he literally plays catch in the backyard with his left hand. He can't even throw with his right arm anymore. So he was dealing with that and trying to play through that throughout his career. Matt Ryan has been synonymous with toughness. Like, you think about him and the shots that he took and hanging in there, played forever, like didn't miss games. His toughness was there. Peyton Manning, we know about what he battled through with the neck injury to have a second chapter there with the Denver Broncos. Philip Rivers played a freaking game with a torn ACL. Like, Matthew Stafford, you remember his shoulder going out, him coming over to the sideline in Detroit and just going out there and throwing the game-winning touchdown right after that. And he's another one you can't peel him off the field. Like, I think that's a big part of it, man. I think at that position, you have to be not only mentally tough to deal with failure, you got to be pretty freaking physically tough there too. And the two guys, we have two active players on here. Patrick Mahomes has had 6 years in a row. So he cracks this list. And Josh Allen's had 4 years in a row. So both those guys, 4,000 passing yards, 6 in a row for Mahomes, 4 in a row for Allen. Interesting thing about them, they are not in friendly weather environments in Kansas City and Buffalo. So take that one out. But I would say, if you're talking about toughness, Mahomes and Josh Allen, two of the toughest dudes in the league, regardless of position.
So we about it, and I think you got the phrase from Steve Young. Steve Young talked about not over my dead body. That the quarterback, the franchise quarterback, has to exhibit that kind of arrogance and competitive stamina that no matter what, it's not happening on my watch. If I'm lined up and I got the ball, we're going to find a way to win. They're the guys that stay on the pickup court all the time. No matter who you surround them with, they find a way to figure it out and win. That comes from not only a belief and a skill set, that comes from the toughness to know, hey, man, we're going to deal with some stuff that the cards may be stacked against us, but it doesn't matter. We're going to figure it out. Just that mentality, that dog nature that we talk about, that separates the good from the greats, because the greats obsess about it. I mean, they obsess to the point that it can be annoying as a regular fan. They go crazy about those things.
So I'll ask you this one question. We'll move off the quarterback after this one. But I'm curious, like we've talked about this with Trevor before, with Trevor Lawrence, who you were around calling those Jag games. Like, I gave him some credit for this year from what I knew from the outside. You're on the inside, you know more than I do, but it did not feel like he was healthy at all this year. But while it didn't manifest itself in wins in a playoff run this past year, I think he might have made a deposit with his team in terms of showing that toughness and just fighting through to get to game day.
DJ, I'll give it to you quite simply. Yes, he did. He earned more points this year than I think in previous years. Not that he hadn't faced with adversity, but I just remember going to the Thursday night game against the New Orleans Saints, and Trevor had first been hurt and you just didn't know. And DJ, he not only goes and like gets clearance in warmups, like he has to perform well enough in warmups to earn the ball. He just kind of gets in, does his thing, knocks around. And I'll say this, DJ, it might have been the best performance of his season in terms of how he played, how he got it together, and those things. But more importantly, what it did, it eliminates some of those questions. Some of the things about his makeup, his mindset, how much does he love it? It eliminated that because he was willing to play through some of the minor bumps and bruises. And ideally, you want your quarterback to be there for every practice, but more importantly, you want your quarterback to show up each and every Sunday ready to go. Trevor Lawrence did that, and I think it not only endeared himself to his teammates, but I think his coaches view him a little differently based on the toughness that he just.
Yeah, no, I think that's a long-term approach there, and man, you wish it would have been able to finish the season better, play better. But I think long-term wise, I think that's going to pay dividends for him. I want to get to quickly 2 defensive positions, a couple defensive stats, and see if we can't learn something. And I know you have experience being around some of these guys, so I want to get your thoughts on it. Most consecutive seasons with 10+ sacks since 1982. Reggie White, John Randall, Lawrence Taylor, Bruce Smith, DeMarcus Ware, Jared Allen, Myles Garrett. So Myles Garrett's the only active one. Myles Garrett's had 6 straight years of 10+ sacks, which is pretty incredible the way the ball's coming out right now. But so of those guys, Buck, you've seen those guys, you've been around a lot of those guys. Reggie White, John Randall, Lawrence Taylor, Bruce Smith, DeMarcus Ware, Jared Allen, Myles Garrett. What do they have in common?
Okay, so play with 2 of those guys. Play with Reggie White, play with Bruce Smith. And what I can tell you, they were freakish in terms of their strength and explosiveness in relation with their speed and quickness, meaning that these guys were super powerful. They were on it. They were able to just hip toss and move people out the way, where, I mean, literally it's King Kong in the just fighting in a movie. That's what these guys had. The other thing that they had when it comes to like studying their games specifically, DJ, comes down to the things that we all talked about. If you have upper echelon elite level get off, first step quickness, that gives you a chance. And then the other part, if you are a relentless competitor that is always playing from snap to whistle, that gives you a chance to rack a bunch of numbers up at the end of the night. Like, you have those things, you have an opportunity to be a guy that can play at a high level for a long time.
So I wrote down some words, and again, I love the fact you've been around these guys. And then, Von Miller shows up a little bit lower on this list. You get some other names like Richard Dent. You get Chandler Jones. He had 5 in a row from 15 to 19. Aaron Donald, 5 in a row from 17 to 21. But you just kind of looking over those names, and I try to look at it and say, okay, what are some of the different things? You talked about the get off. I think that's an excellent point.
Mm-hmm.
Something that we've always believed in and preached on here. I wrote down 3 words. Power. All these guys can win with power.
Mm-hmm.
All these guys play with great energy. All these guys play with great effort. And literally, for the slogan, and I don't know if I'm sure the slogan had been around before Robert Saleh. I know he uses it, but the all gas, no brakes. Like, you don't get a down off. Like, if you're lined up with Reggie White, John Randall, Lawrence Taylor, Bruce Smith, DeMarcus Ware, Jared Allen, Myles Garrett, you do not get a break. Like, literally, it's just 100 miles an hour at all times. And I also think that I believe that energy and effort is contagious. And I think that those guys, when your best player plays that hard, I believe it elevates everyone else around them.
Let me give you one more thing. Superior conditioning. I don't know if a lot of people know this, particularly about Bruce Smith. Bruce Smith did a Stairmaster every day, DJ. When Bruce Smith came in the league, he was number 1 overall pick coming out of Virginia Tech. Bruce Smith might have been a little heavy or whatever. The strength coach, I remember Rusty Jones talk about how he transformed his body. DJ, to this day, he still gets on the Stairmaster. And I remember standing around him and being around him. My perception of D linemen were that we're all fat and chubby or whatever.
Yeah.
Bruce Smith was lean. Bruce Smith had abs. Bruce Smith was, he was obsessed with the Stairmaster and those things. Reggie White was different in terms of structurally. He was different. But Reggie could go all day, play basketball all day in the gym, was in the weight room and those things. I just think that the secret sauce to a lot of their success is their superior conditioning, because you talked about a long day when you have to face these guys. Well, DJ, when you're that guy and you're expected to bring it and close games out, well, guess what? You don't close games out to the fourth quarter. That means that you got to have enough gas in the tank to get to the point where you can close it out. Superior conditioning from star athletes is underrated. And I think sometimes, a lot of times, that's what separates the good from the great, is that extra gear, that gas tank, that third lung that some people talk about when it comes to MMA. They have it, and they have it because they work at it, because they know superior conditioning gives them an edge in those moments.
I love that. I think that's a great point. The gas tank never gets empty. And you think of, as scouts before games, when we go down on the field and we body type guys, and people are like, what's the point of doing that? It doesn't matter. We come in all shapes and sizes. Well, body beautiful, right? We use that phrase in the draft room, whatever, like body beautiful. Like, you tell me somebody who's better put together than Myles Garrett. Like, he is a physical specimen.
Yeah.
Aaron Donald's on this list. We've all seen what he looks like and how he takes care of himself.
Look at it.
How about DeMarcus Ware?
Same thing, DJ. There's not a sloppy one in the bunch.
No,
there's not a sloppy player. There's not a fatty, a pudgy, an out of shape guy that is on the list, because they cannot last. Either they cannot last the entire game, they cannot last the course of the season, they cannot consistently play at a high level. Because DJ, when you're not in shape, and you tell young people that, like, you can't thrive if you're always in survival mode on the field. Your conditioning cannot even be a thought, because you're so locked into playing. And so you got to get your conditioning level to that point where it's not even a consideration. I'm able to focus on the task at hand each and every down. If I'm sucking eggs and trying to get my win, I can't do it. I just think it's a common denominator. And now that you mentioned those names, the Aaron Donalds, the Myles Garrett, to go with the other guy, DJ, I mean, like I think about Julius Peppers. I don't know if he's on the
Oh,
list.
that's another one. Yeah.
I
No.
mean, superior condition, like
Mhm.
well built, chiseled, in shape, can go. And all of those guys, DJ, they all played a long time because they were able to avoid the injury bug because they were in great shape.
You know what I would love to do, and maybe somebody that's listening, that hey, you wanna endear yourselves to us. We'll give you a shout out on the podcast if you can pull this off. I don't think it would be that hard. You mentioned Reggie White playing hoops, right? He liked to play a lot of hoops. I would love, and you talked about Bruce Smith with the Stairmaster.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to know what the staying in shape program looked like. What was the off-season hobby? Jared Allen, I know like he rides horses or whatever, but I would love to know what he did to stay in shape and to have his gas tank be as big as it is to be able to not get tired. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I bet you basketball is a big part of it. I bet you a lot of these guys play basketball in off
Yeah,
season.
they did. I think they do a lot of that. I also think, and I can speak to my time at the end of the Buffalo Bills 4 Super Bowl run. They're going to 4 Super Bowls. They lost all of them. They went 4 straight, which is
Mhm.
crazy. But DJ, one of the things that they did is they had a way of preparing that was uncommon. They didn't practice long. I mean, you talk
Mhm.
about 90 minutes practice, hour and a half maybe, where they would just kind of get in and get out. They really took care of the veterans. But even then, DJ, Bruce would be working out on his own afterwards. He'd be
Mhm.
doing extra stuff. When you hear about Aaron Donald and how obsessed he was with his conditioning, I just think it's the basketball mixed in, but I just think those guys know that for me to be at my best, I got to be in great shape and I got to do
Mhm.
whatever it takes to be in great shape. But it also means that they're disciplined enough to never let themselves get out of shape.
That's a
There's
good point.
not there's not the oh I'm 20 pounds overweight. Let me whittle down. It's they're always right there. They're never too far out of shape that they can't dial it up and turn it on.
Yeah, that is a great point, man. And again, this is why I wanted to do this exercise because we're literally just having this organic conversation, and you do learn some things about looking at players and what to maybe emphasize a little more. Hey, what type of shape are you in, and how do you look? How does your get off look? And that's something we can quantify now with the numbers.
Mhm.
What's your fourth quarter get off versus your first quarter get off? Like, are we seeing you fall off a cliff there? Or are you able to maintain it and maybe even in some cases find another level once you get into the meaningful pass rush snaps you're going to have as you go throughout a game? So that'd be something we can look into. I want to get to the last one here and then we'll run. We don't have to spend long on this one. I just want to give you the active players on this list. This is most consecutive seasons with 100 plus defensive tackles since 2001. And here are the active players we have on there. Bobby Wagner with 12. He's second on the list. London Fletcher was at the very top with 13. But Bobby Wagner with 12. Eric Kendricks with 8, Demario Davis with 7, and then we have 3 at the that are coming up here that have literally done it every year from 2018 to 2023. That's Tremaine Edmonds, Roquan Smith, and Fred Warner. So if you're looking at those names, Bobby Wagner, Eric Kendricks, Demario Davis, Tremaine Edmonds, Roquan Smith, Fred Warner, all different body types. Buck, what do you see there as the connecting tissue?
I think about the reliability and dependability of each of those players. I think about the maturity that each of them display when you've either been around them or you've heard them talk. They all sound like, even when they were younger players, they all sound wise beyond their years, if that makes sense. And DJ, when we talk about the linebacker position, the Mike linebacker position, whatever it is that we want to say those guys are, when you're that person, there is a maturity that you must have to be able to do it. We've never seen an immature player last at that position for a long time. I just
Mhm.
think it's something about just not only the leadership ability, but just kind of getting at a young age where they know how to prepare, they know how to lead, they know how to handle themselves, they know how to act on and off the field. I think all of those things matter because that position is one that is taxing physically, but really it's a grind mentally to be able to lock in and do it. Just think about Luke Kuechly and how Luke Kuechly was when we've had him on the podcast and how
Yeah.
detailed he was when it comes to being able to break down simple concepts and what he sees. To me, I think you have to be wired that way to be able to do it. I don't think it's a position that you can just out athlete people to rack up that production year after year after year after year.
Yeah, and Luke Kuechly would show up towards the top of this list with 8 consecutive years. Um, I love the leadership component of these guys. I believe they're all captains of their defenses where they've played. The leadership is one that stood out. You know, the other thing, Buck, I was trying to pull up some numbers while you were talking, but I know off the top of my head, Bobby Wagner was a 4.4 guy. I believe Demario Davis ran in the high 4.4s. Tremaine Edmonds could fly. Fred Warner ran low 4.6, but he plays even faster than that. Roquan Smith can run. Like, in this age, to be a tackle producer, like, we can talk about instincts and being the most important, you know, seeing, you got to be able to run, man. It's hard to play in this league and be consistently getting to the football if you can't run.
You can't have a great defense with slow linebackers. A slow linebacker. The speed of your defense is ultimately determined by how fast your linebacker plays, because we have talked about it. Luke Kuechly talked about instincts and film study and all that stuff, being able to give him a head start on the competition. But DJ, you're right. Athletic freaks with great knowledge and insight and instincts, man, they can get it done, because you not only have to be able to get from point A to point B in a hurry, but if you can anticipate what is about to happen through film study and just understanding the game, man, that allows you to play at warp speed. And that also allows you to make a bunch of different plays on the other side of the backfield.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at it. I was trying to think of a creative way to put that together, but I just think if you just check these boxes if we just called it the LSI, right? If you just said, hey, our off the ball linebackers, we can get leaders with speed and instincts. That's what we want. You know, like we always talked about STI in Baltimore. So speed, toughness, instincts. I'll go speed, instincts, leadership, like that. And that leadership, that implies that you're not only, you know, that implies you're smart and you can make the calls and you make the checks and all those things, but you can be the captain. You can, if I draft a middle linebacker, Buck, you better envision him having a C on his jersey. Like, that's what you're picking him to be.
Yeah. I mean, look, he has to be that, DJ, but that's not only the thing about that position. And I don't know, like, during your time as a scout, like, it was always big. It was particularly important for John Fox that the guys that we took were leaders, like team captains, guys that came from winning programs, because he wanted those guys to be able to carry the message. Like, I'm the coach, but you got to be the coach on the field. Guys who have been captains, have occupied and played that role. They've kind of had to deliver the message to the masses. But if you come from winning programs where you also have had to be the deliverer of the message, you understand exactly what it should look like and what is going on. And you're not afraid to hold your teammates accountable to whatever the standard that has been created for the team. To me, I think all that matters. And when you have a team that has those kinds of guys, that's when you have an opportunity to do really, really special things.
No doubt. Well, we went a little bit longer than we were planning on to, Buck. But again, this is the fun part about the offseason. I hope you guys enjoy this as much as we do, because it's a chance to grab a topic, get some research, and then just kind of have an organic conversation. This is the kind of stuff that we'd be doing even if we weren't doing a podcast, Buck, of just trying to see, how do we learn, how do we grow, what can we apply as we're continuing to look at these players on a yearly basis. But I think looking at some of the consistent guys, I think there's some tried, true, and consistent lessons that you can learn from it. And I think that was beneficial.
Now, look, it's really funny because these conversations kind of spring up organically, but then when we have the stuff and we go back and forth and we scrimmage it out, you do see these common denominators that exist with the great players, which then leads to the great teams. And today, just those little things, we talked about conditioning or just the way guys are wired, it kind of matters. Like, there is, what do we say? Like, success leaves clues. Like,
yes,
there are breadcrumbs that you can pick up along the way from successful players and great players, that if you can just follow the blueprint, it can lead you to either find other great players or become a great player yourself.
No question. This was a lot of fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. That's going to do it for us today. We will be back. I think we're going to knock another one of these things out tomorrow. I'm heading out of town for a few days, but we'll get another episode in this week. Hope you guys have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next time right here on Move the Sticks.